Hi, and welcome to Screens in Focus podcast, where we share and connect as we spotlight our favorite shows and movies. I'm Diana, and today we're talking about This Is Us, the final chapter. I have two guest co-hosts joining me today. Jenn Trepeck is back. She is the host of Salad with a Side of Fries podcast that talks about wellness and weight loss for real life. Hi, Jenn.
Hi. I'm so excited to be back.
I'm so excited you're back too. Also, I am so thrilled to have Traci DeForge joining us today. She is an internationally recognized podcast expert, sought-after speaker, and media contributor, founder of Produce Your Podcast, creator of PodHive, an online community for podcasters, which is where I met both Traci and Jenn, and I'm so grateful for that community, for the support. And so I welcome you, Traci. Hello.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here. And I have to say, that's one of my favorite things about PodHive too, because I've made so many new friends that also love podcasting like I do. And this is something I've been really looking forward to. I said before we even started recording that in my whole career of podcasting, this is one of the most exciting podcasts I've shown up for. I'm that excited about it.
I know. We all love This Is Us, and it's been such a journey in this show. And I always like to start off with a question of the day that pertains to the theme of the show or an episode. And so in this episode, in the finale, we see Rebecca really trying to hold on to some simple things, some memories that happen in this episode. We see her just on a Saturday afternoon swinging her children, how she remembered how she did that with her father and how important that was to her. And also we see Jack shaving with his kids. And these are just simple things, but they impact us. They stay with us. So the question of the day is, what simple thing from your youth made a big impact on your life?
I mean, I'll go first, right? I'll jump in. Hey guys, it's Jenn. It's funny. I was going to say camp, but then as you were just sharing, what it reminded me of is, this sounds so silly, but it's the theme of the little things. Like I remember driving around with my mom, running errands on a Saturday. And half the time it's like I'd fall asleep in the car or like not feel like getting out when we got somewhere, but it didn't matter, and I remember one of my best friends from growing up was having twins and twin girls. And she said to my mom, what's the secret when you have two girls, or what do I need to know? And my mom said to her, it doesn't matter what you do. They just want to be with you. So just take them with you when you go run errands. And honestly, that's what it is. It's like I remember driving around with my mom on a Saturday, sitting in the car, getting in the car 12 times, and that was Saturdays.
Oh, I love that. And this is Traci. Well, the first thing that came to my mind, especially in connection with the episode, is my mom was a stay-at-home mom, and that was a blessing in itself. But she used to make, she made our Play-Doh homemade. Can you even imagine today? So she made our Play-Doh homemade, and then all my Barbie clothes were made my mom literally should have been a fashion designer, because I had all of these Barbie clothes that were all totally made from scratch that she sewed herself. But what connected me with the This Is Us part of it is in that age where the kids are, they're rolling their eyes. They're this is stupid. This is the dumbest day ever. And I used to feel so self-conscious because my friends had manufactured Play-Doh and store-bought Barbie doll clothes. Mm-hmm. And so I thought that was just embarrassing that I had homemade Play-Doh and couture Barbie clothes, actually. And so one of the things that I loved about the big three looking back as well is that they see it in a different perspective. What they may have thought was so silly then, or that they felt self-conscious about, they realize what their mom or their dad were really doing for them. They weren't trying to torture them. They were actually doing something for them. So that's what that really showcased for me, I think.
I love that. And as both of you were speaking, so many things were running through my head because we all have so many memories of our youth and things that impacted us. And I'm going to go to something that I've probably mentioned before, but it really did have a big impact on me, was that my parents would make tamales all the time. And let me start with first, we used to drive to where my family lived, which is like 8.5 hours from here. But we used to take this long drive there, and we would get there and my family would have food, and they had tamales. Well, I was a little kid and I overate, and I totally got sick on them. So I didn't eat them for years because I just didn't want. Yeah, I was scarred. But my parents would continue to make them. And as I was getting older, I mean, I'm talking through the teenage years, right? They would say, okay, it's time to make them. And I would just groan because I did not want to make them. They are very tedious and there's so much work that goes into them. But I had to, help out. And they would say, well, you're not going to get to eat any if you don't make them. And I'm like, fine with me.
Twist my arm.
Yes. But I eventually started to eat them again. And of course, then I got married. I had kids. And so one of my sons, we were trying to figure out a fundraiser. And guess what came up? Making tamales. So that's what we did. And so now we made them as a family, a next generation of family. And to this day, I still make them for Christmas Eve dinner. So I have carried this tradition with me, something that my parents taught me, something that I thought I hated also, but now it's just so important to me. It's the recipe my parents have handed down to me. So it means so much. So, these are just such great memories. Thank you guys for sharing those. So friends out there, we would like to know from you, what simple thing from your youth made a big impact on your life? You can leave us a comment on social media, our website, or email at screensinfocus@gmail.com. Would love to hear from you. The links are in the show notes. Okay, so before we dig into this final season of the show, and yes, there are spoilers ahead, I would like to know from each of you what draws you to this show. Jenn and I had touched upon this in the last This Is Us episode that we did, and there is a link in the bio to that episode. But I would really like to start with you, Traci, on why you watch This Is Us.
That is just not an easy, simple answer. There's so much involved in why I watch This Is Us, but it didn't start out that way. So when I literally accidentally stumbled upon it, I didn't see any previews for it. I didn't know anything about it. I hadn't heard about it from anyone else. And I can still remember I found it by accident, and then I watched the pilot and I was just hooked. Like from the very first episode, I thought this is an amazing show. It's so well produced. It's so well written. The time period that they reflect back on is similar to the age frame of the time of when I grew up. So the flashbacks were, I could connect with them, and also and I really like Justin Hartley. I told you there was more than one reason. And so, and speaking of family memories, this was not maybe the most positive one, but my mom, being a stay-at-home mom, was also a big soap opera watcher, and he was on Young and the Restless. So anyway, all I'm saying is that I'm glad he was in the show, and I'm sure we'll talk about him later because I will want to. But
I didn't know this. I love this.
Oh, yes. Yeah, definitely. Like, you can't see me, but my face is bright red. Okay. So, so there's that. So it started because I literally stumbled upon it, really loved the way it was produced, loved the way, and as a producer in video and audio podcasts myself, and being in the broadcast media business for so long, like I really have an eye and really value that in shows as well. But then it evolved into something else for me. It evolved and especially over the pandemic, it evolved into a really connecting, like a connection point for the other people in my life and even in business that I discovered watch the show. So just like the three of us, we've connected over This Is Us over the past couple years. And even within my family, it was like a thing, like, are you going to watch it? Because we obviously weren't hanging out in person. So we'd be texting during the, watching it. And then it was just something that just turned into a connection, like a really heart-centered connection point. And it was just so fun to always be like, what's next, and speculate, and who's Justin gonna, who's Kevin gonna end up with. And so for me, it also felt like just something that I looked forward to, not just watching the show itself because of what it was, but also just the after party conversations that I got to have with friends and family. I think that's probably looking back, when I look back on it as an entire series, that's the part I think I'm going to relish the most leading up to and including doing this podcast together. It's just been such a good connection point.
Yeah. Yeah, it has been. What about you, Jenn?
So I mentioned this before, like I'm a junkie for like TV shows based around family and having a group of main characters. But I think too, well, first of all, I'm a TV junkie, and like I have a problem probably with how much television I watch. And so I don't know, maybe this is my confession, but so I also have this weird thing where I pride myself on knowing what shows are going to make it and what shows are going to be canceled.
Interesting.
And this is dumb. It's a game I play with myself and my mother. It is not a real thing in the world, but in my world. Anyway, so when this one started, I was like, this, like it's going to last.
Huge hit. Yep.
Huge hit. Also, I just put it together. So my senior year of high school, I was our yearbook editor, and the theme of our yearbook was This Is Us. And I came up with that. And I just put that together right now. But
and
like,
you came up with it? That's an important thing to note. So cool.
But it was one of those, I don't know. I love TV. I loved these characters. I'm partial to Mandy Moore because she and I are very similar, like very close in age and, growing up with it. And then similar to you, Traci, it was like for a long time in the show, the present day age was my age. Like the age I am now. And so there's definitely a relatability there. And then even for me in this last season, I think I mentioned this when we were doing the last episode, Diana, I feel like I've had anxiety in the last year about like losing my parents. And I think part of it was fueled by this show. And then part of it I think was also calmed by this show. That it's like you're so connected to these characters. And it's like, I agree, Traci. I think it's so much more than a TV show.
Well, and I also want to just add this in just for the dichotomy is I am not a big TV watcher, like at all, hardly. And so for me to have really just immersed myself in this particular show and loved it the way that I loved it says a lot for my experience with the show, because it's not something that I usually fall in love with in a way. It's not that, I love TV, don't get me wrong, but I just am not like, I wouldn't consider myself a TV junkie. And so I think that makes this so much more even a standout for me in terms of the connection points and things like that, because it was just so fun on so many different levels. It might encourage me to become more of a TV junkie now.
Well, if you ever need a show, I got a whole list.
Yeah, well, and Diana has a whole podcast I can figure out. But no, I love that. And I also just feel like, again, they took some of the most simple, beautiful things in life, and then they made the writers were so extraordinary. And something else that I just thought of as well. So I'm adopted. So the whole storyline around Randall and them not telling, that really was something that struck me in a way that might not have affected everybody who was watching it, because when you are adopted, like those experiences that Randall went through, and not even, aside from all the obvious diversity and inclusion issues that he suffered through and that the show brought awareness around, but just the whole being adopted factor and being like not knowing what you look like you don't know that you look like your parents, or you actually literally don't know what it feels like to look like another human being when you're adopted. It is a very, very strange phenomenon, because you grow up and you're seeking, like looking at my dad's got this, brown eyes, and my mom has this, and so it's such a natural thing when you're a child and you're your biological child parent connection. But when you're adopted, you really don't know what it feels like to look like someone else. So I can't even imagine for Randall, not only was he not the same race, but then he had two siblings that were in theory, were genetically connected to their parents and had the same mannerisms and the same skin coloring and the same things that they favored with each other. So I related to that as well on a level that probably was something that I didn't even realize until this moment that we're talking about it, that connection point was really deep for me as well.
Yeah, man, I love that. So yeah, for me, I agree with what Jenn said about loving shows about family, because my family bond with my family is very, very strong, my parents and my siblings. So I love seeing that. And I had mentioned this on the last episode that we did too, Jenn, was that I had loved Parenthood, that show. And so when that went away, I needed something to fill that void, and it was This Is Us. And I was blown away too by the very first episode. I love how you didn't know that each story was connected. You saw the big three as we come to know them now, and we saw this young couple having babies, and then how at the very end of that episode we realize it's all the same family. And I just love that. And I was in it from the very beginning. And I just feel like the show is a moving tribute to family and love and relationships and connection to people, whether you're a biological child or not. It just shows you how strong that bond can be, and how strong memories and moments are to you, as we spoke to in our question of the day. And this is why I watch TV and movies, because I want to be moved. I want to have an experience, and this show gives it to me. And I also always judge how well I like a TV or movie by how much I cry. And the more I cry, the more I love it. And this show just has me in tears almost every episode, even when it's something comical happening in it. It just moves me. So I just love This Is Us. Okay, so I wanted to share with you guys, I did a poll on who is your favorite couple. And
I guess it's not going to be a surprise.
I was going to say the results are not too surprising, but I was curious because I wanted to know if everyone else felt the same way I felt. So,
did you do the poll on Instagram? Where'd you do the poll?
I did it on Twitter.
Okay.
So it was between Jack and Rebecca, Rebecca and Miguel, Randall and Beth, and Kate and Toby. So, do you have any wild guess who came in last?
I'm going to guess Toby came in last.
I'm going to guess Rebecca and Miguel came in last.
Toby came in last.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, because there was so much buzz around, like people had really polarizing opinions about them breaking up.
Yeah.
And I thought they addressed that really well in the final too, by the way.
They did. Yes, they did. Oh gosh, we're going to get to that. But I guess when in comparison to, so Toby got 3%, Rebecca and Miguel got 6%, Randall and Beth received 30%, and Jack and Rebecca 61%.
Okay, but if you had put Kevin and Sophie in there,
I think they would have lost even further than Toby.
Well, I'm sorry, but I vote for for Kevin and Sophie. That's my vote, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah. So with Rebecca and Jack being the top vote getter, let's talk about them because they are the foundation of this family. Their love and dedication is so profound. And I thought that the ending with both of them was so perfect. She had passed away in the penultimate episode. And in the final episode, I love that he guided her through her transition and just saying all the things that she needed to hear. And I loved how she would ask questions that I would think of. Like when he tells her, you know, you're always with them. You're not going to miss out on anything. And she says, oh, am I going to see them showering? Because I don't really want to see that. I think she said showering, right?
She did.
Yeah,
She did.
yeah.
And she's like, I don't think I want to see them showering. And he was like, you won't.
Yeah, because I've thought about that with my parents who have passed. And I thought, you know, are they with me? But what can they really see? Because I don't want them seeing me things that I wouldn't want them seeing me doing. So I just thought it was so, I just love that the writers and creators had her voice things that I have felt or thought about and how he was able to guide her through that. I just thought that that was just so special.
My favorite moment in that conversation was when he just looked at her and he was like, you did good.
Yes.
You know,
Oh my God, that's making me cry.
It was like everything any of us needed from him,
Yes.
right? Like not just her, but all of us, like the acknowledgement of what she created. I know, we all have chills.
I got
I have
chills,
tears.
Jen. You've given me my chills.
But like, you know, the acknowledgement of what she created with that family and even choosing Miguel and all, you know, it was like, it was everything anybody needed from him. You know, there was actually, I heard an interview with the showrunner and about that penultimate episode. And they were asking a question about, you know, that scene and, you know, which version of Rebecca, like at what age she would be on the train and then what age Jack would be. So apparently he had the showrunner, head writer, you know, had a conversation with Milo and they both just looked at each other and they were like, mustache Jack. Like that's who it's gotta be, you know? And I was like, it was everything about it was sort of like the perfect conversation and the perfect moment. And like, I'm not gonna lie, I knew when she grabbed Randall's hand, you know what I mean? Like I knew that piece was coming to like tie it together. But
How did you know that?
Because
of
I
the
know
interview?
things about TV. No, because I can like this is my problem with
Oh,
television.
you mean like you knew intuitively?
I knew that was good. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
No,
She's on what
like, I
connection
can
do you
write
have
this
with
stuff.
those showrunners?
Right. Yeah.
Well, I just
No,
felt they did a really amazing job of keeping everything so secret. Like there were no leaks. There were that I know. of.
Right.
There were
No.
none.
We're going to come back to that because I have thoughts on that. But
Okay.
but like the other thing about going back to your actual question, Diana, with their relationship, I also thought, you know, in the finale, again, spoilers, when they're having that day at home and doing nothing, and Jack teaches the boys to shave, and then Jack and Rebecca are sitting on the couch, and it's like Jack is looking at the kids and she's looking at Jack. And then there are other moments where like Jack is looking at Rebecca. Like there's this mutual admiration and like taking in the moments that the other one is having that is like relationship goals.
Exactly. I was just going to say that. I love that so much. And I did want to share with Traci and our listeners out there. I had already told Jenn, but Jack, you know, Milo Ventimiglia is like my favorite because I just love a man who fiercely loves his wife and his kids. It's just something about it. I just think it's so, it's just sexy and I just like it. It's awesome. So just how you feel, Traci, about Justin Hartley is how I feel about Milo Ventimiglia. I just love that he loves them.
Well, I've probably had a little bit more of a broken road on the way to relationships like Justin has had. So I think I also am a big supporter of the underdog. So and he's hot, but yeah, I mean, they did. And that's another thing. I mean, like I would love to have been in the writer's room. I would love to have a opportunity to talk to the writers about who wrote this, because it was just phenomenal that it just like nothing about any episode ever in the entire 6 years was ever overdone or underdone. Like it was just done, and just in a way that was just beautifully written and executed. And the fact that they were so strategic in so many ways in how it was recorded and when it was done. And it's just, I now literally want to go back and watch and I don't know that this will ever happen, but I am going to go back. At least I'm going to go back and watch episode 1.
Yeah.
Because I hear that a friend of mine who did that, she said it was amazing to go back and watch episode 1 because there's so many preview, like, I guess, what do they call it? When they drop things.
Flash forwards or things?
Yeah. Well, there's just
Easter eggs. Or what, Easter eggs?
Easter eggs, yeah.
Yeah.
I was saying Taylor Swift, Easter eggs. There's so many. There's just so many Easter eggs apparently in that first episode. Now that it's completed, you see them. But anyway, I just think the writers and how they, I mean, and that's complicated. We're talking about, three kids, grown up lives, children's lives, plus the adults, the parents in it, and it all was seamless. Appeared so anyway.
Yeah. That's what drew me to come back all the time, was just watching their story. And I love when they show flashbacks and the flash forwards too, but I really like flashbacks. There's just something about them. It just moves the story, and just learning so much about other people and their background. So I just really enjoyed all of that. I also like when Jack did say to her, at the very end there, when the world puts something so obvious in front of you, you don't just walk away. I just thought that was just
well, and how that was connected to the flashback and the whole. I mean, that whole pin the tail on the donkey thing was a mystery for many episodes. And I am not exaggerating when I say that between the last episode and the finale episode, that I spent time in my life thinking, you know what? They forgot about the pin the tail on the donkey. And they never solved that. I was thinking, like, I was trying to catch them in something like, they dropped off on that one. Don't even, yep. And then I'll be damned. They clearly did not drop off on the pin the tail on the donkey.
So anything else about Jack and Rebecca you want to talk about before we move on to the big 3? Let's talk about Randall. Let's talk about Randall.
He's my favorite.
He's your favorite? I love that.
Beth is my favorite too.
Beth is your favorite, yeah. I love Beth.
Yeah.
I mean, who couldn't love Beth? I would want to be Beth. Like, if I was a mom with kids, I would want to be Beth.
Also, the two of them are like relationship goals to me too.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
They have that same fierce, I wish there's a better word, but having each other's back.
I mean, they are the definition of for better or worse.
Yeah. And the way they call each other out on their shit. Can I say that? Sorry.
Yes.
Way they call each other out.
It's podcasting. Of course you can.
Right. I have such a terrible potty mouth, but it's like they just so fiercely have each other's back and call each other out, but in a way that is so supportive.
Yeah.
And in a way that's like, there are times when, one's going to fall apart and other times when the other one's going to fall apart, but they can both do that. Like, I feel like in so many relationships and other relationships on TV, it's always one plays this role and one plays that role. And I think the two of them do both things. And even when they're sort of both in that place, they're both only like half in that place.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that it's like they can still help each other through it or out of it or whatever it is. But like, is this now when we get to talk about the fact that like we all think there's going to be a spinoff, or maybe at least Traci and I do? I don't know if Diana does too.
Yeah,
like,
well, I did, but I don't anymore after the finale.
Don't? Oh, I think
you do. Well, that makes me happy. No, I've thought it for a couple years, but really this season for sure. But after the finale, I didn't.
I had read that the creator said that he was like, right now he's put it to bed.
I think it's coming in a year. It's not this fall season because we would know if it was coming this fall.
And because
there's no way they would have. No, but I don't actually know. This is again like my gut, my TV junkie gut, right? Is that it's not going to be this year because if it was picked up for the fall, they wouldn't have been able to keep it a secret.
Yeah,
but everything in the finale, right? Like the fact that, as we're talking about Randall, right? Like he's headed for the White House. Deja's having a baby. The whole final episode was talking about the big three and the next generation. And Jack is like, when you put something this obvious in front of you, you don't walk away from it. Like
oh my God, I can't believe I missed that one.
But like everything about it, like
so good. Yeah.
You know, with all of these things and the fact that like, you know, Toby is also still such a major player. Like he will be there, right? Like all of these kids. And then they even did a flash forward to baby Jack having a baby.
Yeah.
In the finale. Like there's no way you're dropping all of those seeds.
I hope you're right. I gave up on it. I gave up on it. And I've been the one that's been touting sequel for all year long. And I thought, after the second to last episode, I was like, oh, they were totally teeing it up. I felt like there were so many things but then they just wrapped it so gracefully that I was like, yeah, I don't think and on my text last night to my peeps, I was like, yeah, I don't think there's going to be one now.
I don't think it's going to be this fall. And it wouldn't surprise me if they're going to shop around and try to sell it to not a major network. Like it wouldn't surprise me
like
if it
a
ends
Netflix
up on like an Apple or a Netflix. So whatever, Diana cut us off. But like
back to Randall and Beth and them being a couple.
Right.
And no, it's fine. But I love when they play that worst case scenario.
Yes. The best game ever.
I've decided to integrate that into my marriage, by the way.
Did you?
I am not exaggerating. I really have decided to, because I'm like the eternal optimist and I'm always like glass half full, like, and sometimes that's a blessing and a curse. My husband is the total, like, I won't say he's not a glass half empty by nature, but he will always go to the worst case scenario first and then get excited maybe. And I'm the opposite, right? So we work really well together. So, but that game last night, in fact, before I watched it, my husband and I were having a conversation about something I was working on in the business, and he started going to the worst case scenario. I was like, let's just not do that today. Let's just enjoy the celebration of the project itself, that the contract is signed, and then tomorrow we can go to the worst case scenario. And I'll be damned if then I watch, and then I was like, and now I'm going to watch This Is Us. And so literally that was when they had that in there. I thought, I'm going to integrate this into my marriage. This is going to be my version of marital therapy.
Yeah.
And again, it's writers, right? But the way they play worst case scenario is stuff that I would not even think of, where I'm like, they're really good at this game. I think
it was hysterical. The RV was hysterical.
Yes.
And what about when she said, and you're going to go swim in the ocean with somebody's dead grandmother or something like that, because she was like, because I think that of all the episodes, that probably was the one that was maybe a little hokey in the context of the rest of them. And then they brought it back up in a funny way, which again, brilliant.
Yeah, it is brilliant. I love them, and I love Beth. I know she's just so funny. And she's so funny. But when she was saying goodbye to Rebecca, when she said, she says, thank you for helping me with that complicated and incredibly beautiful boy that you raised, but I've got him now.
Okay, you're making me cry.
Oh my
Seriously.
gosh.
Like what everybody said to her in that episode, in those moments,
Right.
were the absolute perfect things.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
They were. And another moment was when that, of course, I told you it's my barometer of figuring out how much I love something, is when Randall says that his mom is magic. Oh my God. I had tears. And I think it's because I think of my parents, and I also think of me as a mom and what my kids, might think of me, or when I pass, or all of that. It's just, this brings up everything, and it's so relatable. Just, Jenn, like as you were saying about Alzheimer's and thinking about your parents, it's thinking about all of this. And I love that about this show. They even bring in grandparents into the show and how they relate to you and how they feel. So I love that this show gives every generation like a voice or a perspective.
And how much credence they gave William in the last two episodes was really, I mean, I loved it, but I wasn't expecting it. And I thought that was beautiful. And then again, the what you're saying, Diana, about the grandfather situation, and I think again this connects those dots on being adopted, but he was saying like he only knew those girls for 7 months, but he never realized, it was something to the effect of how much he could really just grow to love, his granddaughters in such a short period of time. He only knew them for 7 months. And then the whole connection between him and Randall and Deja and Deja's adopted, obviously. And then the grands, it's just like, again, just this, they left out no dynamics. I mean, they had adoption, they had foster kids, they had diversity, they had inclusion, they had, challenges with weight, body image. I mean, they covered it all.
Yeah. Alcoholism,
being widowed.
PTSD from
PTSD, absolutely.
Yeah.
But in such a way that wasn't like in your face. Like it was
right.
It was very naturally interwoven in a way that felt legitimate and
real.
Authentic.
It was, I feel like the way they covered all those things is the way that we all actually experience it in life, rather than these like giant caricatures of PTSD. It was like, no, this is what it actually looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. And that part with Nikki at the church was hysterical.
Yeah.
Bringing Nikki. Speaking of, can you say something on national television? I was very surprised that they used the word dick on national television. I was like,
I know.
Wow, that's not an FCC violation? I suppose not. Yeah. Wow. That was, I just was like, profound word.
Yeah. Let's move along to Kevin.
Oh, okay.
Traci, go for it.
I have a feeling he's one of those people, though, have to say that if I met in real life, speaking of what Nikki called him in the last episode, I have a feeling that he's, of all the characters, the least authentic to his actual character. And I only say that based on some clips that have come out really recently. Like there's a Today Show clip where they showed a behind the scenes after they finished filming the wedding episode, and they were taking a break during filming, and they were all doing that
dance.
They did the dance, like the woggle, they called it, or something like that. And then they show Kevin Hartley, out of character, like sitting on the couch being on the phone, and he's not participating with the rest of them. And then they asked Beth about it, and he was like, I'm not doing that, like da da da. And then there was something else that I saw where he was just like kind of like not warm in the interview, and he wasn't showing up as much. Like, and I mean, they're characters. I'm not being unfair to him. I'm just saying, like, in all the other behind the scenes clips or interviews or anybody that I've seen interviewed, they just seem like they could pop right back into that role in or out, like on the talk shows and stuff. And he was the one that seemed the least engaged outside of, like, I thought he did a phenomenal job acting that role.
Yeah.
But based on the behind the scene clips that I've seen, I don't think he's actually congruent as much as the other ones are to that actual role.
Mm-hmm.
I said this the last time we did an episode, Diana. I have a really hard time with watching Selling Sunset and how he handles his divorce.
I
in real
know.
life.
I was going to bring that up.
It clouds how I see him as an actor, and I can't even see Kevin as a character. Like I cannot separate it. Like it makes me dislike Kevin. Mm-hmm. Based on what I saw of how he handled things in his real life on this other show, which that also may not be real either.
Right.
That was only her side of the story.
Exactly.
Admittedly.
I mean, because come on, do you think he really genuinely I have more faith in the human world than to think that he freaking texted her. Like, that just seems like...
I would hope so. And who knows? Agreed, right? Like,
I think that was a ratings push for that show. I've never watched that show, by the way. Full disclaimer, I've never watched her show. I didn't even know I knew he was married, didn't know it was her. Show. But, of course, the only reason I know the story is because, I'm on Team Kevin. And if I had not seen those other clips that I just referenced, we would be having a much more heated battle right now. And it did cross my mind after some of those clips when he wasn't as warm. I thought, maybe there was something to that divorce story on Selling Sunset.
So, yeah, and like, who knows? But,
it's hard. Things are taken out of context sometimes, right?
Totally.
I mean, it's hard to say.
And I'm admitting that, right? Like, this is totally me being completely clouded and, like, inappropriately biased.
Yeah, but people are still fighting over Jenn and Brad. So, come on.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this will just be our, Team Kevin team.
But I will say one of my favorite things about Kevin really growing up. So I said this on our last episode, Diana, where I was like, I'm so over it. Like, he needs to, like, get it together. And he did, right? But when they were figuring out, who was going to take care of her and make these decisions
Rebecca.
And whatever, and Randall was like, well, it has to be me and da-da-da-da-da. When Beth pointed out to him that, like, Kevin is not the same person that he has in his head, I was like, okay, Beth, I see you. Like, I needed to hear it too. All right.
And I'm glad you were able to receive that. But in the context of that, I loved the scene where Rebecca and Sophie were talking, and she was talking, thinking that it was Sophie younger.
Yes, I love that.
That was the best, when she was just like, he's going to grow out of this and he's going to be the man you want him to be. I just hope you're still going to be around and wait for that to happen.
Yes.
And then there they were. Like, it's like, that's what Sophie needed to hear, even in her, the way, again, the character, even in her illness of where she was, her mental capacity of where she was in her illness, the clarity she was still able to give, and that gift that she had for all of the kids and everybody that she talked to. She was always able to say the right thing at the right time. And remember at the, in the finale where Kevin says that, was it Kevin or was it Randall that said, you always know how to say the right thing? It was Kevin, wasn't it? Yeah, when he was a little boy, he was sitting on the bed when she went in. And remember,
yes.
she went in and he was so upset because he was embarrassed because he couldn't do the pull up, and then she gave him the little pep talk, and then the little Kevin was like, "Mom, you always know how to say the right thing."
Yes, it was Kevin,
and it was such a common theme for how everyone saw her through that role. Her role as a mom through everything.
Meanwhile, my favorite part of that conversation was when Kevin was like, "It played."
Oh,
like the way.
Oh yeah. I just made it seem like I was helping the other kids feel better about themselves. It played.
That was amazing. That was like that was my favorite part of that conversation. So like, you had to remind me about,
Oh yeah.
When he told her she said the right thing.
Okay. Now we're gonna go off track, but I have to say, if we never say anything else, I was blown away by the actor that played Little Jack in the Rain Boots episode. That the acting for that, he couldn't have been a day over 3. I know that little tater tot needs an Emmy. Do they give Emmys to 3-year-olds? Because if they do, like, he needs one. Do you think? Do either of you know if he was blind? Is that actor blind?
I heard he wasn't, but I could be wrong.
Well, if he wasn't, then he's even better actor. But
Right.
if he was, I mean, either way, it was phenomenal. The acting of that little boy.
Yeah.
So just side note,
He deserves an Emmy.
he deserves an Emmy if I'm able to vote.
I love that Kevin ended up with Sophie. I thought that was an interesting episode where Beth and Madison were taking bets as to, was it Beth and Madison?
Yeah.
Taking bets as
bets
to
on
who,
what and again, they kept the suspense on that even
They
to
did.
the very last freaking minute. And of course, I mean, I think it comes as no surprise that I thought that was a phenomenal episode. And I was like, okay, this could be the finale. I'm done. Like they don't even do anything else. This is where it could end for me. But keeping you in suspense. You didn't know she was divorced because of the way they did the flashbacks and There was at one point, now I'm sure I'm not alone in this, but there was one point where I thought he and Madison actually were going to get back together. And then when
I really like Madison.
I liked
as
her
a character and her dynamic in the family, and
they really evolved her character from where she started to where she ended. But I love that scene when basically he was like, this is how I interpret it, but when they were talking about the medical things and being the designated person, but it was like he was basically so lost, and he was telling her like, I don't really have a person, and she was like, I'll always be your person, like that. But then you knew that she was moving on with her life with her new husband and everything. But just that whole exchange again, like, co-parenting is not an easy challenge for anybody. That's another issue they brought up and did so eloquently, co-parenting.
Yeah. And we see that with Kate and Toby too, that co-parenting and how that
even
can
watching
be
how their marriage fell apart felt very real and genuine,
but a bit fast tracked. That was my comment on that. It was like everything was great and then it wasn't, and now we're divorced and we're remarried. Like it was just a bit fast tracked for me.
Well, it's funny. I had just said yesterday with another friend that I didn't see the purpose of her getting remarried to Philip. I didn't really understand what that served. I felt it would have been better if she had been on her own and stood on her own 2 feet and did everything that she was doing on her own as a strong woman. And that maybe toward the end, she could have started to date Philip, and maybe we wouldn't see where that goes and we could figure that out.
Until the spinoff.
Yeah, exactly. Until
the big
spinoff.
3 coming fall of 2024.
Because I'm not really sure her remarrying
if they don't do
him.
it, we're going to do it.
I know, right?
That is a interesting. I hadn't thought about that perspective, but from a women's empowerment perspective, I can see that would have actually been really positive. I don't know. Maybe there was just full on entertainment value just in that piece of everybody. I think from the interviews that I saw with the writers and the things, it was like they were committed to everybody having a happy ending. Like that felt like it was really important to them, that the finale.
Yeah, but I'm going to sit here and like dig my heels in as the single girl and be like, F you that you think that a happy ending means that she has to be in a relationship.
You are 100% correct,
Right.
and I would like to delete my statement.
No, I'm not saying you said that.
No, but I mean, I did. No, but I'm guilty because I just associated it without, subconsciously or consciously. Not consciously, but I did just define everybody's happy ending as ending up as a couple, and that's not 100%.
Yeah, but I think that's them, not you. But whatever, that's fine.
Yeah, but I think I bought into it. Is all I'm saying. I'd like, okay, I will let myself off the hook. Thank you, Jen. I am not a bad person.
But I do want to say, I think the reason I'm saying that also is because I am a Toby fan, and I would have liked it to be open-ended as to if they were to get back together again, even though we don't.
Well, I kind of still think they did do that, though.
But then she would have to divorce, right?
Well, that's
Philip.
true.
So I
Even
feel
still,
like
I appreciate the way Toby showed up. In the
Oh,
last
I
few
love
episodes.
it.
Like the way Toby showed up when she got married and said,
Yes.
okay, I get it now. And then the way he metaphorically held her in that finale in a way that Philip, or at least we didn't see Philip do.
Me too. Philip wasn't even in it, by the way. Philip wasn't even in it.
Well, he was around. But he was.
Did you actually physically see him in it?
I think he was in the background. I think he was.
Okay.
But he didn't
at the funeral.
say squat.
Anything.
You
Yeah.
know?
Okay, so then speaking of Toby, then there were a lot of people that were hating on Kate during the divorce. Like there were a lot of people who. Oh, Diana was one of them.
I kept saying what I don't know. I guess I'm just a Toby fan. I understood what she was saying. I understood where she was coming from, but I thought she was being hard on him. Oh, and the part where the two brothers get on him too, and they're all three standing there. Oh my gosh, looking at Toby, I thought, oh man, he's not going to win here because you've got three Pearsons on you. It was like,
and that's part of the fast track too that I thought was like, that's the part. I feel like that was rushed because
think about it. When he was doing CrossFit.
Yes.
And she felt like she was losing him. Mm-hmm. And then, they have this baby and he doesn't know how to relate to the baby. And then they have another baby that's like the save the marriage baby. Right. And then it
had been going on. You're right.
But I do agree. Like it sort of did seem fast track from where they were. But I can also appreciate like you put a long distance relation, like they made this long distance thing with his job and then he has this new identity in this place and she's like, I feel like I don't even know who you are.
And then they did the flashbacks of her having conversations with the old Toby.
Yeah.
But okay, again though, marriages ebb and flow. People change within marriages.
Right.
And sometimes you just can't get back on the same page. And I thought another issue that they addressed in real human life terms is that and her kind of reminiscing and romanticizing the person she married is not the person she's married to now. I mean, even if you stay married or you get divorced, I think there's nobody who hasn't had that conversation with themselves in their own mind. And I mean, married or not married, right? It's just like the person who stands up and says those vows to each other is not the same person the following year, 5 years, 10 years, 20. And that is, I think, what made Randall and Beth so amazing is that you saw their characters change. She lost her job. She lost her identity. She moved for him.
Yes, she did.
So if you I think that was happening a lot is comparing and contrasting. Well, Randall and Beth made it. Why didn't we? I mean, that's life. Like some couples in real life can be Randall and Beth and some have to call it quits. And so, those are difficult things to navigate, all the things that you just said, Jen, in terms of, the potential almost affair and then the child bonding and then the identity crisis. And I mean, she was having her own identity crisis while he was finding his. And that, I mean, that in itself. So maybe it wasn't as fast tracked as I thought. Yeah.
I was thinking as you were talking also, when he was telling her how he felt, and basically, I'm not Jack. It's basically you want to marry your father, and I'm not him. My gosh, that got
and
to
he
me
always he was always up against that with her, and
he was.
One thing I did think was weird, and I'd love to know what you guys think about this because it didn't really. It fell flat to me. That whole thing where Kate went back to that boyfriend and like confronted him, and he was like the big loser at the record store or whatever. Like that, I don't know why, but that episode fell flat to me. Like I was like, I
sort of forgot about it, so I guess
I did too. Yeah,
but I think if we were to try to put it in the context, right, I feel like that's a piece of her closure and her growth of saying, like, I put this guy on a pedestal and I have these ideas in my head. And, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm trying to justify it. I forgot that even happened.
Well, the good thing was Toby was there supporting her. He drove her there, got her there. And so, and I do love that he was a part of all of this. And they did highlight what his contribution was to this family and that they still included him. So,
and that ending was so graceful with them. It was.
Yeah. And even when he went to say goodbye to Rebecca, he said, I'm your favorite.
Oh my God.
I'm still your favorite.
I am.
I love that. And I also love that Kate was so insecure throughout this whole show and she became or she started to become fearless at the very end. And I love that he supported her, that Toby supported her in that and reminded her that your mom gave you, you know, this important decision because she knew you could do it.
Yeah.
And so I just love that.
And to defend my negativity around that particular episode I just referenced, I think that was part of the building blocks of the person that Kate became at the end. And so that was probably important in the sequence of the events for her to confront him. And
I think the idea of what happened with her career, in finding her own career even, because remember when the show started, she worked for Kevin.
Yes.
And so there's even this whole thing of like her evolution.
Yeah, she was his personal assistant. What a nightmare that must have been. What a nightmare job that must have been.
You know, like her
he was a train wreck,
her own identity and her own, you know, and excelling in her thing and finding that, you know.
Well,
whatever,
and even coming out from under her mom, the shadow of her mom, because that was always her mom had a beautiful voice, and she, you know, put that part of her life aside to be a stay-at-home mom and raise the kids, which was so typical of that generation of that time, was reflective of that time. But I think Kate not going to music school, not pursuing, knowing that she had just as beautiful a voice and probably had just as much of a opportunity in a lot of ways, but she just could never connect that, or she wouldn't pursue that. Like, it was like she was always intimidated by her mom's presence in that way. And then she still found her niche in music, but just in a way that was unique to her. And I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do too. Okay. I would like to know, do you have a favorite episode or moment from this season?
From this last season?
Yes.
I mean, I guess like the one where the penultimate one, right? Like the big one when they all really said goodbye to her. But I also loved this last episode. We were just talking about something and made me remember, you know, when they do the flashback to buying the pin the tail on the donkey game and the kids on the front look like them, you know.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Oh, that's the most beautiful part. You got to go back and rewatch that. That's what she was saying was the obvious part. That's when he says back to her at the end during the transition about when something puts something so obvious in front of you.
Yeah.
Because the picture on the pin the tail on the donkey is two boys and a girl playing the game, and one of the boys is Caucasian, the other is Black, and then the little girl is Caucasian.
Oh,
and it's like a mirror of their family. That's the whole.
How did
hate to have to point it out to you on the podcast, Diana, but that was the moment.
Okay, so here's what was crazy for me in that moment. My mom has this piece of art that is two little girls playing on a beach. One is a redhead, one is a brunette. The brunette is in this red bathing suit. My sister has bright red hair, and I had this red bathing suit that had a silver, like, lightning bolt on the front when we were little. And my mom found this at an art fair. And she said, and it was like, my mom was like, these are my kids. And like, what? And it was at an art fair, and the artist, so she said, like, he said, I was on a beach in Florida, and there were these two little kids playing, and like, we are convinced it is my sister and I. My grandparents lived in Florida.
My gosh.
And like, so my mom is convinced that like,
you inspired that
was
painting.
Us, that like this guy was there
this is
painting
us.
And like she found this photo. So then when they had this box of like, you know, the pin, the tail, and the donkey, I was like, yes, it's real.
Yeah.
Well, and again, generationally for that time, that was very progressive for a children's game to reflect that. I mean,
yeah.
And it was and the kids were able to see the mirroring of that in a way that was like, they're just like me, which I think has been what's been so important in the last couple years, especially about having films and TV mirror people's real families and what they see in each other is coming back at them from the screen, like being able to have that relatability and see those connections. But to bring that subtlety into that episode from that time window generational time window into the current present window. It was a really beautiful way to build that bridge, again, subliminally. But I think, okay, to answer your question, this is so silly, but I mean, how could I not love this Kevin and Sophie reunion? Like it was, and not just because, okay, I can go a little below the topsoil shallow aspect of it and say that one of the things that I really actually loved about it was she made him like, this isn't your time to talk. Like, you've said enough over the years. Like, I don't need it. Like, this is my turn to talk and tell you why this is going to work. She loved him all along, but she was self-preservation in a lot of ways, and she should have been. I mean, she was involved with an active alcoholic, and she was, and he had been unfaithful, and he had created self-sabotage. I mean, there were a lot of really good reasons why she should not or might not have been willing to just jump right back into that. And we were talking about Kate and her journey of coming into her own. Well, Sophie had that journey too. Like, she went and traveled the world after her mom died, and she found herself, and it was incredibly important for her to have Kevin love the woman that she was at that age and not be in love with the 7-year-old Sophie from the Valentine card, from second grade. And a nice surprising twist the way they did that, because I think everybody thought that they would probably end up together, but I don't know that anybody really saw it coming that he wasn't going to do the big elaborate, like, moment of truth speech, because he'd already had enough of those and they never worked out.
Yeah.
So the fact that she came back into the relationship on her terms and with her empowerment and who she was in that moment, I felt like was a really great way for them to handle that. Plus, they were meant to be.
Yeah, I think they were. I'm really glad that they ended up together.
Having the Valentine in the wallet was a little much, but it was so
I thought he was
cute.
going to pull out the napkin and be typical Kevin and take the poem from the wedding singer and give it to her.
And pretend like he wrote it.
Totally.
But yeah. So that was my favorite moment of all times, probably.
Yeah.
Not of all times, but it was for the season, yeah.
So I think for me in this season, I have too many, and I always cheat. I can never pick just one, just so you know.
Well, clearly we didn't either.
Right.
Because I think, okay, anything with Jack, I love, because I just love him, and I just love him, and just all of that, and him guiding Rebecca was just so moving to me. But what I really wanted to bring up in an episode that I really enjoyed was Miguel's story, because I just love it. I love the flashbacks. I love when they tell a whole story of someone's life. And I felt like we got to know him so much better, because I didn't like Miguel back when we knew they were together, but we didn't know anything about him. I'm like, what are you doing? This is your best friend and you're moving in, because that's how it felt. But as we have seen, that's not how it was. And there was so much time that he left, and, Rebecca was on her own, and it wasn't until they reconnected again with Facebook. But that was just kind of fast forwarding that whole episode. But I was going to say, I just love his whole story about when he came here and what he had to do, and about his relationship with his parents, and then working really hard and meeting Jack, and how Jack had his best friend and had his fiance. I don't know if they were married yet or not. I'm not sure if he was married to Rebecca, and how they didn't get along.
No, because there was an episode where Miguel was with him when he was planning the engagement, and he got the ring stuck on this finger when they were practicing the proposal. So yeah, they were. Yeah.
And just all of that, just learning so much about Miguel, and just seeing how much he loved Rebecca. So this is another man that loved Rebecca. And in that episode where I believe, Jen, that we covered that she said that she had
2 great loves, or
2 great loves.
Have 2 men who really, whatever it was, I can't remember.
Third time.
The one where like they end up at the chick's house.
Yes.
So that was a thing of like, should Nikki have ended up with Sally?
Yeah, but I guess you don't get two of those. We had to have Sophie and Kevin. That had to happen. So I guess they weren't going to give us both of those. That's the way I looked at that.
Right,
but,
right.
But with the Miguel thing, I just wanted to say, I was kind of bummed that they waited till the third to last episode, because it was like, man, they gave him the short end of the stick for 6 seasons, and then they made you like really love him, and then it was too late because it was his last episode. I was like, oh wow. And then he kind of even snubbed him a bit on the train too. Like he got his one moment, you're still my favorite person or whatever. It's like, all right. Well,
I know.
I mean, it was like an afterthought. The doctor got more on the train.
But I love him.
I love him.
I do love him.
I love him, and I love that they brought him back. Oh, I love that they brought him back into that train. But I always felt like poor Miguel kind of always got. And then even in the worst case scenario between Beth and Randall, she even goes, and then you're going to go over to Puerto Rico for Miguel. It's like they used Beth's lines to just really point out like some of the funniest stuff. But poor Miguel, I think he was just always coming up with the short end of the stick. And even when I would see him in episodes, because obviously I watch a lot of behind the scenes stuff, that's like my most favorite thing.
I love that.
In the interviews, even like they would give Kate and Kevin and Toby and all, when they had like the group of them on together. And then like Miguel was always sort of like, oh, okay, what do you think, Miguel? Okay, great. Like it was like, they wouldn't even give him any screen time in the behind the scenes interviews. So I felt like he could have used a little bit. They could have, I wish they had put that story in place at the beginning of the season so that we could have really just loved him as much the whole time.
Yeah.
That's all I was trying to say. It's like, why did if they could have just given us that at the beginning of the season, I think we would have loved him longer, is all I'm saying.
Yes, I think you're right. That would have been really good. But they were good on so many other aspects of this show. But and I also think people weren't happy that he just had a one-liner on that train. So because he was such an important
Not only was
figure.
it a one-liner, it was like a cut and paste, because like he'd already used that one-liner for impact on the previous episode, and it was like I kind of just thought he might say something a little different than something he'd already said before. But they didn't ask me, Diane. I don't know why. Why didn't they ask me? They have such strong opinions.
I mean, I could write all this shit. I'm just kidding.
Well, maybe we will write the sequel then.
Yes, we will.
I got it. It's all up here.
All right. Is there any other characters or tidbits that you guys would like to talk about or mention that we haven't covered?
Well, I guess the only thing I just want to, this isn't profound by any stretch, but they really dropped off Randall and Beth's kids. Like, it would have been neat to have a little bit more, especially Annie, the younger one. Like, we never really we saw her as an adult, but we never really got to see her advance from just being sort of like this cute little part of the Thanksgiving holidays, if you will, up to, and then we see her as an adult, and we don't, by the finale, or the last two episodes, we don't really know her. We don't really know her. And so that's why I kept thinking, well, if they do a sequel. Exactly. Even if they just called it the Pearsons and it was just the Pearsons.
Oh, what about Marcus and his family that they introduced to us?
Yeah, see that.
Oh, my mom sent me an article about it.
Because I thought maybe that was one of the big reasons why I thought there might be a spinoff, because they introduced an entire new family. But at the same time, they also build that bridge between the impact that Jack made on that whole entire family right before he literally died. And then the fact that he ultimately ended up doing an Alzheimer drug that obviously probably sustained Rebecca and kept her more cognitive longer. I think that's probably the reason for it, but I wanted to see it as, they're building a new family. We're going to have a sequel.
Exactly. Yeah, they did tie it in, but then I wasn't sure. Is that all it is? And of course I feel like they were trying to have us think that was Deja's the father of Deja's baby.
Yeah, it was a
before they
little bit of a
actually-
bait and switch on that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so in this article that my mother sent me from NBC Insider that I literally just skimmed to get to this point in this moment, so there could be more. I'm legit cherry picking.
And I want you to email me that article, please.
Okay. So why was Marcus Brooks' story included on This Is Us? So in interview with People, the show creator Dan Fogelman said he always intended to introduce another family whose lives paralleled the Pearsons. I always thought that the second to last episode, in a way that hopefully surprises, would tell the story of another person, potentially a child, who had survived in that same moment that Jack had been lost. Fogelman explained it's very much at the center of the show. So on the very night that the beloved patriarch of the family died, Jack passed on advice that translated to a whole other family he'd barely know for the family of a child who was saved that night. It was also important to us to have that story inside this very episode.
Yeah, because of
know. My
the
sister
Marcus
thought-
piece, I think. I mean, because of the Malik piece, I think is why they.
Yeah. And they intended for us to think that Marcus was potentially the father of Deja's baby. But my sister thought that one of Jack's organs was going to go.
Me too.
I thought that too.
Okay,
Yeah.
so listen to this twist. So, one of my This Is Us peeps that thought that at the beginning when the car wreck actually happens,
I
because
thought it was going to be Beth.
no,
Or
they
Kate,
thought
I
it was
mean,
going to be Kate because Kate
that's
was
what I
never
meant.
in the flash
Yeah.
forward. So they thought
Yep.
that it was going to be
was
Kate was
rushing to get there.
hmm But I knew that wasn't the case because speaking of things that they did leak, they said there were going to be 2 deaths. And so Miguel had already died and we knew that Rebecca was going to die. So I was
Right.
like, well, they can't kill off Kate if there's only going to be 2 deaths. So, and that just would have been like heart crushing. And again, I keep coming back to every interview. They said they wanted it to be like a warm hug. They wanted it to feel like everybody got closure, like everybody got a happy ending. And but what a plot twister that would have been. Holy cow. If she had been the one driving that car on the way.
That would have been yeah, that would have been.
That would have been like the worst. Like everybody would have been. That would have been like the crock pot moment when and poor crock pot. I would be remiss with my passion for marketing, branding, and advertising not to bring up the fact that they really did not intentionally anticipate that Crockpot was going to get so many haters as a result of that episode. That just shows you the power of product placement. Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness. Mm-hmm. Poor Crockpot. And then wasn't there something though they brought that back up? Or maybe I saw it as a meme, but I saw something about Jack stealing a crock pot from a picnic. Might have been a meme.
I don't remember that.
I don't remember. But again, if we all do the thing that we're really not going to do, which is rewatch this entire series from the beginning.
I know. Right?
Yeah, that would be 6 years. Then we'd have to do this episode again 6 years from now because that is probably how long it would take me to do it.
I know.
So, you know what I wanted to bring up as the creator Fogelman, he had previously revealed that the final episode, you guys, I'm sure you read this, right? That about 2/3 of the finale had been written by and shot 4 years ago.
Well, it was a lot of flashbacks.
Well, because the kids, but there's a clip, I watched it last night where, so the kids, because the pin, the tail, and the donkey, that big 3, that set of big 3, they were in puberty. And so he knew it when it was going to end. And then they show a picture. So if you go and you watch this clip, it shows what the kids look like now. And they look like, like hipster teenagers right now. Right.
Yeah.
So he had the foresight to film so many of those episodes while they were still authentic to their, age and looks and everything. But what I wanted to bring up, and I don't know if anyone noticed this, and this is bittersweet what I'm about to say, but a couple of years ago, one of their writers passed away unexpectedly. And
I remember this.
And there was a chunk of time where I felt like that the writing was noticeably different in some of the episodes. And some of that had to do with because the creator let Kevin and Beth and Randall write and produce some of their own episodes, and that was awesome. But they're, obviously they're not the writers. But then they also lost this other writer unexpectedly. And when probably around the last 4 to 5 episodes, I was talking to somebody about it, and I was like, I guess this feeling that these episodes were written before that writer passed away, because they were so powerful, like I remember being like the first 3 or 4 seasons were being, but I didn't know anything like that they had been filmed previously, or I didn't know any of that. But I just had this strong feeling like these were written before that writer passed away. That writer made a major contribution to this, to the writing of these episodes. So I can't remember her name, but I just want to give my own personal tribute to her, because it was a noticeable gap to me. I just thought that was just something I observed.
I love those moments. Yeah. I just thought that was so cool that he knew 4 years ago where this was heading, and the forethought to use that.
And film them then, right? And
yes,
then the theme of the episode, of our episode today, the pin, the tail, and the donkey, like that flash forward, Beth is saying, is she saying like, I've got to be the one to bring the pin, the tail, and the donkey? Or when she's at her dance studio, someone's asking her, did you bring the pin, the tail, and the donkey? That's why I was saying earlier, they never finished the pin, the tail, and the donkey story, because that was one of the flash forwards. And I thought that they weren't going to tell us why that was so important. The whole entire last episode was completely focused on that one flash forward.
And that scene also brings like the quote to me that is this entire show and like sums up the whole thing for me. And it's when Kate says, Rebecca says to her, how did you know where it was? And she said, because I knew exactly where all of you were standing. And as long as I could hear you, I knew where to go.
Yeah. As long as,
I'm like,
I can move forward. As long as I know where you are, I can always move forward.
And that it's like, I could hear where you were. And that's the whole thing. It's like with Jack and Rebecca, like their whole family. Oh, the other thing was when, this is my second quote of the whole thing, is when at the end, the 3 of them were saying, when somebody says, oh, your family, the first thing I think of is you guys. None of them, they're like married families that they're creating, but when they think family, it's them. And I was like, those 2 things to me are this entire TV show.
I love that, Jen. You actually jumped ahead because
sorry.
It's the next question is, what is your takeaway from the show? It could be a quote, moment, or sentiment. So I love that. I love both of those things. And I agree with you on that, because it was so funny, because when I think, of course, I have my husband and my children who are grown, but also when I think about family, I think about my youth and my parents and my siblings. So it just really resonated with me when Randall said that.
I think mine is from the episode before where, and I think this was also why I thought there was going to be a sequel, but what I really loved that was sort of the theme was, just because something's ending it doesn't have to be sad. It can also be the beginning of a beautiful journey. And so for me, that was like sequel, but then like really like thinking through like literally what they were saying, just because something has to end, it doesn't have to be sad. It's the beginning of a beautiful journey. And then how they carried that into the finale with Deja having the baby and Randall being a grandfather and them talking about not drifting and all of the things that they did set up, sequel or not. It literally did feel like a warm hug. Like when it literally ended, it felt like it didn't feel like some big finale ending. It just felt like another episode of This Is Us just ended, but sadly it's not going to be another one after this. And I don't know. I just really loved that quote. And that was probably my biggest takeaway, because in life in general, some things have to end and they end unexpectedly, or they end in their course of time, but it doesn't have to necessarily be the end of how you remember them or how you move forward. You just move forward differently without them. And I think that's what the beautiful thing about This Is Us is, like, we're all forced to move forward differently without them, but we get to carry all of those life lessons in our heart.
So I have the same quote, Traci. I that stuck out to me, and that was my takeaway. And it, of course, was William who said, "The way I see it, if something makes you sad when it ends, it must have been pretty wonderful when it was happening." And it really stood out to me, and it immediately made me think of things that did make me sad, and this just kind of gives you hope about it rather than feeling sad, realizing that it was because it was so wonderful. That is why it makes you sad. And so don't be sad about it. Just be happy it happened. And so I just loved that quote. And I know that the creator said that this whole series and the finale, he just wanted it to be about hope. And you know, that people carrying this well after you're gone and the people that are left behind. So I just thought that that's such what a great show or what a great sentiment to have with a show, that it is about hope. And I just love that.
Yeah, me too. And I am very sad that it ended, but I am happy that it happened.
I know, exactly. Oh my goodness. Well, you guys.
2024 people.
Fall 2024.
We'll be looking for that.
Coming soon to Netflix.
Well, I want to thank you both for joining me today. It has been, it's been so much fun getting together with you guys and just hearing what you had to say. And you guys reminded me of so many things that happened in the show. And now I want to go back and rewatch it. And now we're all going to get together and rewrite a sequel together about it.
Yes. And we'll pitch it to all the producers.
Yes.
Totally.
But thank you. Thank you both. Thank you both for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely.
And Traci, it was so fun to have you for this one too.
Yes, it was so fun to be on. I just wouldn't have missed it. Obviously one of my favorite things to talk about.
All right. So I will have Jenn and Traci's contact info listed in the show notes. So please go check out their websites, because they are just great people that I care about a lot. So check those out. So that's our show. Thanks for tuning in. We are grateful you tuned in, and we hope something we said today resonated with you, gave you a chuckle, some happiness, some positivity, or inspiration. Please go to screensinfocus.com and connect with me there, and tell a friend. We would love more members of our TV club. Next show will be on Fear the Walking Dead, Season 7, Episode 15. Also, look for Top Gun Maverick. We'll see you next time. Bye.